Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Bovin. You know what? We all know the intro spiel. We're recording a slot machine. Help us get a new friend. Share the show. Yada, yada, yada. Make sure you use the code GP10. Get 10% discount off Gilly Puck products. We are a part of the pro staff. And with that being said, I do like to run a quick little video for them. So here we go. Use the code GP10, get 10% discount off the products. Anyways, I'm just kidding. This is the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for tuning into the show. Each week we cover a new state. This week we are in Missouri, but we had some troubles finding some guests and reached out to Adam. Him and I have been talking, and it's like, you know what, let's get him on the show. Anyways, make sure you put your cord in the slot machine and help share the show. I strongly believe hunting is a dying sport, a dying lifestyle. And for everyone out there that has been sharing the show and supporting of the show, I can't say thank you enough, and I greatly appreciate everything you guys are out there doing. And like I said, we did cover a new state each week. We do a live show Monday through Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, this is Missouri week, but we're back here in Michigan, the homegrown state. I love it here in Michigan. Anyways, it is hot here in Michigan. It's like 90 basically, so it just, you don't even want to go outside. It sucks outside. It's like, what's that that Ace Ventura movie where he's stuck in the rhino and he's just constantly ripping off layers, and it's that hot. It's that hot here in Michigan, at least in my opinions. So it's brutal outside. Anyways, we're looking forward to tomorrow though, because we had the day off at my work. So we're going to be doing some land management duties tomorrow, or as my wife likes to call it, woodland duties. So my buddy Braxton and I, we're gonna be out there doing some work, putting trail cameras up and putting some trails, tree stands, getting those moved around, stuff like that. So we're excited for that. Anyways, enough about that. Let's get into our guests. Our guest tonight, Bow Hunters Chronicles podcast. Let's give him a round of applause for Adam. What's up, brother?
Just another day, another hot day. Kind of hot in these rhinos.
Oh yeah, no kidding, man. My wife brought that up to me. I was like, you know, that's freaking hilarious. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I can't stand the heat. I'm a ginger, so I get hot very easily, and in this heat, it sucks. That's why I love the fall. It's nice and cool. I'm the type of guy that loves to wear shorts and a sweater around a bonfire. That's my perfect temperature. 65, a little sunny, a little cloudy, on and off here and there. That's prime for me, man.
Yeah, I can't necessarily disagree with you. This hot is a bit much, but you know, I feel like Michigan kind of, you know, we get the short end of the stick on weather. You know, everybody says, oh, you know, Michigan weather, da 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 da. I was just in Montana bear hunting, and it was like 80 degrees when I got off the plane, and then like 2 days later, it was 29 and a half inch of snow. And so it was like, well, you know, and this is the June, you know, end of May, June. So Michigan's not so bad. It's not so bipolar as, you know, some of these other states. So,
yeah, I can't get over the heat. I mean, Michigan, we kind of like, I think sometimes take it for granted. I mean, we get like really hot in some days, and then the winter just seems to drag out, and we get like fall for like 2 days basically. So, I mean, but how was Montana hunting? I know you and I were talking, and you said you were out there in Montana, out there hunting for bear. What was that like?
Well, so it was a bunch of guys wandering around with rifles that didn't know what they were doing, but we did manage to kill a bear right on the 2 days before I went home. So with our podcast, we do Patreon, and so that's just a way for us to like, support the show. But we've built this great community, and like so the way that it all came about was, I don't know, 3 years ago now. Had some guys that met just through listening to the podcast and stuff, and they came over to Michigan. Like one guy was from Ohio, one guy was from New York. They came to Michigan to hunt turkeys, and then they had some weather come in where they were hunting, so then they came over to my side of the state, and we got on some birds and ended up missing one with a weapon malfunction or whatever, however it goes. But man, we had an absolute blast, and so the four of us were like, man, we need to do this for a deer camp. So then we threw together a deer camp real quick. 30 guys showed up from Rhode Island, Iowa, Texas to come hunt middle of nowhere, public land, Michigan, just for that camp, for that, shorts around the fire, kind of like that you were talking about. And one of the guys actually had just moved, was literally in the process of moving to Montana. And so we started joking around like, oh, we need to do a Patreon hunt west, like Bowhunter Chronicles West, where, now we got we got a guy out there. So that hunt stemmed from that. We kind of goaded him into, inviting us out there. And it's one of those things where you're going to go travel, halfway across the country, all the way across the country, depending on where you're at. One of the guys from Rhode Island, he went all the way out there for the Montana hunt. But so it's a Michigan guy in Montana. He lived out there. This is his second year out there, and never, bear hunted Montana, but it's a cheap tag, relatively speaking, for an out-of-stater. I think all told with the fees and everything was like $365. And so we went out there, and some of the guys got out there before, like they left like Memorial Day weekend. And then my wife, who's awesome, puts up with all my antics and traveling around and stuff. She said, just don't mess up my Memorial Day weekend. You can go to Montana, but don't mess up my weekend. So Memorial Day comes and goes. I'm on a plane Tuesday morning to Montana, and I fly back Monday. And so we did a lot of glass and drove around. If you've never been out west, I mean, it's beautiful. We saw a couple bears, glassing from the truck, and before I got out there, they glassed up one, and then it got killed. And then in that spot, there was another bear that was killed. They were just like an hour too late because we were, we didn't spike out and camp or anything. We were just kind of going from his house out to all this different public land and trying to glass up a bear. And I mean, obviously 2 guys did it before us, and I glassed one up right before the other guys were going to leave, like literally 300 yards from the truck. Like we could have shot it from the truck if it wasn't just moving through. And we'd 8 minutes left illegal, ran after it. And, it was like a freaking yard sale. I mean, everybody was like, oh my God, this bear, like, super fun, great experience. We were unsuccessful in that one. And then, so those guys left that day. The guy from Rhode Island left the next day. He got up, packed up all of his stuff. And then the guy that lived out there and myself, who, he'd obviously hunted the mountains before, and that's what brought him out there. And I've hunted out of state a bunch, and I've hunted out west. I think this is like my 4th trip out west or something. So we're like, and it was the weekend. So we were like, we need to get out somewhere where we're not going to run into any people. So there's no glassing from the truck. We're going to go in and find a spot. And we brought all the stuff to just stay out overnight. And, we were going to get into some bears, and we ended up hiking in 2 miles. At first we had like plan A, plan B, and we on plan J, we were like, the river's too far to cross. Like we can't, we need to make a plan. We were going to cross this river that he had crossed before, but with all the snow melt and everything, it was like super high and super fast. And like, that's not happening. One of the trails that was on the map was definitely not a real trail. And, so we were like, well, we'll just take the trail the other way. We hiked in. It was about 2 miles, about 1,500 feet. It wasn't super crazy as far as like a climb. And we sat there for an hour or so. and it just didn't look good, didn't look right. We couldn't see enough. So we were like, well, if we go around this edge, we'll be able to see more and we'll get a better plan for like tomorrow, or like kind of maybe we'll see something that we can go after tomorrow. And come around the corner and there's a freaking bear up there 400 yards away just feeding on this face. And then it was, all hell broke loose, but we weren't in the truck. So we just got down and I was able to video the whole thing. He the guy that lived out there, he's like, who's shooting? And I'm like, you just shoot it. And so I got the cameras going, and it was awesome. And so neither one of us had ever killed a bear. Neither one of us had ever packed anything out. Like, I'd killed some elk and quartered them up, and the mules come in and pick them up, but I've never, what you think of as like the quintessential hunt, right? You go in, you shoot something, you carry it out on your back. Well, we don't know how to process a bear. We don't know how to, save this cape, anything like that. We had no idea, but damn it, we're excited about it. And it was awesome. It was incredible. And, for everybody out there who's like, I don't know, like one of the things with us, I guess, like the group of people that we have, like that kind of like flock to our Patreon and our podcast and stuff like that, there's very little ego. So it really didn't matter at that point, like who killed the bear. And like for people that are paying attention or whatever, they're going to say like, yeah, it's easier for you to say because you didn't kill the bear. Like, yeah, I was there. It was my bear too. But I mean, honestly, I could give two shits. Like if it was me that killed the bear or him, like we both did all the exact same stuff, except for he pulled the trigger and I videoed it. I mean, I could have been selfish and said, no, I'm going to shoot that bear. And, maybe I'd have missed, maybe I'd have messed it up, but it was freaking awesome. So.
I was glad to hear that you had a fun time out there in Montana. I know we're covering Montana coming up here in a couple of weeks. I think next week, actually. And Montana just seems like that state where you really want to really get your feet wet out there. And because it's so vast, it's so big, and you really want to try hunting out there. And I know for black bear, I know that I would really love to get my first one here in the home state of Michigan. But Montana would be the state that I definitely, it's like, you know what, if I'm going to get a bear, my first bear, and it's not going to be in Michigan, Montana is going to be the state that I want to do it in.
Well, it's cool out there because there's no bait. So you can't hunt over bait. Like where, so the first time I went elk hunting, I went to Idaho. I know a guy out there, and you can bait out there. So he's like, I run a bunch of bear baits. He's like, if you want to come out and shoot a bear. And he actually was here over the winter and showed me a picture of the bear that he killed. And he's like literally posing with this bear with the bait barrel in behind him. And there's another bear eating out of the bait barrel. So I think, we're a bow hunting podcast, and we killed that bear with a rifle, but we have zero idea of what we're doing. So it was a very successful hunt in that, right? And we went into it knowing, without these like visions of grandeur, like the first time I elk hunted, we went out to Idaho. We were bit by like the born and raised bug, right? We're like, we're going to go out there. We're going to do it. We had freaking 60-pound packs going through places we never should have been. And you talk about like vast, like until you get out west, like you don't realize, like we went out there 2018, and that's what I was telling the other guys who'd never been out west, who, what can you take away from a experience like that where you weren't successful or whatever? Well, when we were out in Idaho in 2018, like we did, I think it was like 116 miles, 115 miles in 11 days. And so like, you really get to understand like your mapping. And then like, when I got back to Michigan hunting public, like you look at this little line, on your phone, like on Spartan Forge or Onyx or whatever you're using. And you're like, in Idaho, this is like 2 miles, but in Michigan, it's like 500 yards. And it just makes you that much more confident in like your abilities to be able to like traverse that. And especially like when you're like, oh my God, that's nothing compared to what we were doing. And both where we were at in Montana and where we were at in Idaho, where we were at in Idaho, that was like 9 miles between where we were and the next road, or like the next place where with a vehicular path. there's horse trails and stuff like that. But that is considered the front country. Like, so when people are like going like true back country, it's like even more vast. Like it's probably like what you have in your mind, but it's really hard to quantify or to like even think about like how really big it is or how very small you are until you get out there where there's nothing.
I could see that kind of being a pucker factor where it's like, damn, it's just, you get out there and you're just like, holy shit, I can't believe how like big this place really is. And you're just like, shit, do I really know where I'm at? Do I really feel like I can do this? I feel like that if you're something new out there, you don't have a friend or a guide out there that's been doing it for a while, I could see that moment just kind of sinking in and it really kind of affecting you mentally.
Well, that's, that's what happened to us the first, like in Idaho, like we drove all the way out there. We stopped at my buddy's place. Like we drove, it was a 30-hour drive out there. We stopped, slept the night, got up, organized our gear and left. And he didn't come with us. He was hunting his own hunt. He just said, you can put your stuff at my house and, here's some good areas, have fun. And, we parked, we had an idea of these trails or whatever. And, we freaking walk up like, maybe a quarter mile and like, you can turn around and still see the truck. Like maybe we climbed, 300 feet or something like that. And we're just like, that's when it like really hit us, like that we don't have any idea what we're doing. Like we've never done this before. There's no, so you're really going back to like the podcast that you listen to or like all the YouTube stuff and, all the apps that you downloaded, for elk hunting, Elk 101, Elk Nut, all that stuff. And you're like, okay, like, and then, for us being like super flatlanders, we would have been better served, I think, to go up north to find the elk in Michigan, like in Atlanta or whatever, and take a look at the herd. But, we're like, is that an elk track? Is that elk poop? Like, cause there's moose, cause there's, there's everything out there and you're trying to figure out like, what the hell am I even looking at? It's just, but I think that's why we, wanted to go out there and do that bear hunt is to kind of, the amount of elk that we saw, we saw moose, we saw bighorn sheep, we saw tons of mule deer. And to get out there and, I don't know, hike with a purpose, I guess. Like it wasn't just like going out hunting, just going out there to go hike or, where you want to go see pretty stuff. Like, so you're just in Yellowstone or wherever. We were still hunting, but and understandably, like in all the quote unquote planning that I did for the bear hunt, like for all the elk hunts that I've done, like I've done tons of map scouting and trying to figure it out. Cause I at least, have some idea of like what, and we did some podcasts on bear hunting and stuff like that and talked to some very successful bear hunters and talked about Montana and stuff like that. But having been out there enough, like I know just exactly what you said, like that pucker factor. I know what I don't know. I know that I'm going to get out there and there's going to be, the map says there's a trail there. Well, there was a trail there when the map was written, but not necessarily today. And the amount of deadfall and bullshit that, just, you can't go out there thinking like, oh, this is my plan. You need all 100 of those plans because they're, inevitably they're going to fail. It never just works out.
Right. Yeah, you can't just rely on plan A to work all the time. You have to have a backup plan for each of that, backup plan, and be able to not mentally crumble if your plan didn't fall through, be able to push forward. But that's just me thinking that's what you need to be able to do in those type of situations. But with that being said, we didn't get into who you are. So who are you?
I'm
you
the
give us a
world's
little
worst
background
bow
about
hunter.
yourself.
World's worst bow hunter. That's
No.
that's who I am. Like, so I'm the host of the Bow Hunter Chronicles podcast. We've been doing this. I think this is our 6th year now. And like I said, it's world's worst bow hunter. So it's really easy for me to bring on all these, anybody really, but like high level hunters and ask questions from like the not successful guy, because I've made all the mistakes. I've done it. And, I'm getting better. certainly getting better, but I think I'm challenging myself more. I've opened myself up because I've had, 6 years of a podcast a week talking to absolute killers. Like if I'm not getting better, then I'm not asking the right questions or something. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're out of West Michigan. I've been hunting since Michigan. I'm old. So this year I'll be 43. I've been hunting since I was 12. Like back when I was a kid, there was no youth hunt. There was no anything. So 12 years old, you could small game hunt and you could bow hunt. And then 14, you could rifle hunt. And I don't think I killed a deer with my bow. I shot at a lot of them. But I don't think I killed one. I shot at on my first bow hunt ever. I missed a deer twice. And I don't think I killed one until I was 20 or so. And I married into like a very, very outdoorsy family. And we have a hunting camp in the UP. So I started out hunting on public, but with rifles, it was always private land. We got 240 acres in the UP and a nice little cabin and stuff, and it butts up to public. And my father-in-law used to run the archery department of the sports shop here in town. And then his brother-in-law used to run the archery department in the other sports shop here in town. And so my co-host on the podcast is his nephew, my father-in-law's nephew. And he's a freaking wizard. Like he builds our bowstrings. He tunes all of our stuff. Sometimes he helps out at the local shop, but he can do anything with a bow and he's a good shot. So we're very, very different in that way. Like I'm just like going to buy it, try it, fail, go out, hunt, fail, hunt, fail. And he's like very meticulous in all the stuff that he does. So we have a really good like back and forth, on that as far as like what we do from like our podcast side of it.
Yeah, I started hunting when I was 12 years old, and I remember the first deer I shot at went right below its stomach. It was at a doe, and I remember crying in my tree stand, and my dad comes down there, picks up my arrow, and starts climbing up my stand, and he said, "Brett, why the fuck are you crying?" I said, "I've been practicing and practicing since I could pick up a bow and shoot a bow," and he's like, I don't want to miss. That's just my competitive nature inside of me. And he's like, well, that's hunting. So you gotta get used to it. And that's bow hunting in general. So you really gotta get used to it. And you're gonna miss. I've missed countless times. So it's just gonna happen. And a week later, I shot my first like four point or whatever. But I love bow hunting. It's my favorite thing. And I'll never hunt with a gun. The day I can't hunt with a bow is the day my arm physically cannot draw back a bow. I'll go down to 20 pounds if I have to. I don't care.
I don't know. I would say to that. And I feel very, very similarly. I just love the challenge of hunting with a bow. I think we do the animal a disservice when we say, and I say it all the time, and I'll tell you why it's wrong. But I say, every deer that I see with a bow, like I could kill with a gun, right? And but the animal gets a say too. And so like when you say like, oh, I could have killed that buck, I could have done this, like nah, because we've all missed those chip shots. We've all done that stupid thing where we're already eating them, we're already texting our buddies before we even let the arrow go, and then it all goes completely sideways. But I'll tell you, I did a spike camp out in Colorado with my dad, and they needed another guy to go on this elk hunt to fill the trip. And so it was at an outfitter, and my dad and his buddies had used this outfitter a whole bunch of times from the lodge, but they'd never done the spike camp. And the hunt was freaking amazing. You go out there, bring all your stuff, go in on horseback, and they drop you off. They say, we'll be back in 5 days. If you shoot something, cut it up, quarter it up, call us on the radio. We'll come pick it up. And they said, you might want to try here. You might want to sit here. But that was all you got. It wasn't like guided. It wasn't, but they just dropped you in a good spot. Right. So I went out there and I was like, I'm not going to I didn't even bring a rifle. I brought my bow. I'm like, I'm going to kill one, but it wasn't my hunt. So I wasn't going to go hunt the way that I hunted elk with a bow, because we had a big area, but it was, you can cover a big area and you can see a long ways out in the mountains with a rifle. So I wasn't going to go just trounce around and mess it up like the opening day of elk season, first elk in Colorado, because all these guys, this was the hunt that they planned. I was just another guy that went along. So and my dad is getting older, and when am I going to have another opportunity to do something like this, right? So I go out there. I hunted the first 4 days with a bow, and I sat with my dad. And then like day 4, I think I went and did my own thing. Day 3 and 4, I think I did my own thing. And then I told these guys, I said, the last day I'm just going to borrow somebody's rifle and go kill an elk. And that's what I did. And I made a shot with somebody else's rifle at it was like 275 yards, 260, something like that. Rah, cool. Killed an elk. Didn't kill with my bow. It was fun. It was awesome. Really enjoyed it. The whole camp experience, like everything was cool. Fast forward to going up after Thanksgiving with all the family goes up there, like with all the nieces and nephews and kids. And we hunt. And I go in with my rifle, and I'm like, I'm just going to walk in, shoot a doe. I missed a doe at 30 yards with my hunting rifle from a saddle. Just wandered in, found a spot, missed with a rifle. And then the last day, my brother had shot a doe, and I snuck around, a couple hundred yards and circled these other does that he had spotted. And I missed at 90 yards after I had already, I missed. I went back, sighted in my rifle, did all this stuff. So, I mean, it's funny because we say, oh, rifle hunting so easy, and man, did I have to eat like a whole bunch of humble pie on that. And I don't know that I'm necessarily like glad that I did or whatever, but it just put everything like back into perspective, because I think I'm king of the world. I made this longest shot I've ever taken on a animal with somebody else's rifle. Like, look how easy it is. You guys are missing, da 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 da. Come home, and then I can't even freaking hit the broadside of a barn with my own rifle. So
yeah, and it just shows that's hunting, and you gotta get kind of prepared for those situations where anything's going to go wrong. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, so you got to prepare for those type of situations. And I've been known to say that, oh, you pick up a gun, that's the easiest thing in the world. And that's what, especially being said now about crossbows. I mean, you shoot out to 300 yards. That's this whole big debate now. But that's why I also love bow hunting the most, because everything's basically that's going to go wrong. It's, in a way, in my opinion, it's all on you. Unless you're not taking care of your bow correctly, and let's just say your string somehow, whatever equipment wise, I'll put a little bit of asterisk next to it, but a lot of that stuff, even if you have equipment malfunctions, comes down to you because you didn't take good quality of your bow. But sometimes stuff can happen. There's a crack in there, whatever, stuff like that happens. But anyways, getting off topic there, but that's why I love bow hunting, because it's so attention to detail, and you really got to make sure to pay attention to them, because if your knock is not on your string, you're going to mess up your shot. And you got to get these deer within basically 20 yards, and just the encounter with everything with it. So many things can go wrong. And I just love bow hunting. That's why I love it. Basically, it's just so many things you got to do with it. You can't just go out there and pick a gun up, pick your bow up and shoot. You have to make sure it's dialed in and it's form and a whole bunch of other things. And that's just my take on bow hunting. But I grew up when my dad was, when I was young, I was born in 93, finger releases. So you had to shoot with your finger, and that's how my dad taught me. And then I moved on to a release. Now I'm on a different release now. And I think for someone to pick up a bow, I think it's a great idea for them to learn how to start with fingers, because then you really get a real grasp of how a bow is going to release. And I think that's just my opinion of how I think people should start off. Now, technology, though, you got all these different type of releases, back hinges, back wall, and all these other type of releases out there. But I'm kind of glad, though, I started off with fingers. I had to do that for years before my dad's like, all right, We'll get you into one of those new technically releases. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because I've got a 8-year-old daughter, and like when she was 2, I bought her like this Nerf bow, and she was shooting. We'd bring her to the Bowman's Club, and she'd shoot her Nerf bow, and then she had her. We tied a D loop on it, so she was using the release because she wanted to shoot like Dad, and then I've got a few different bows that she's shooting, and I think she likes shooting her recurve. So I bought her one of the Bear Little Brave bows, like one of the vintage ones, like that I had when I was a kid. Not like the red fiberglass ones, but like the real, like 20 pound, like real recurve. And she loves shooting that, and I think that's the same thing where she's not just punching the trigger or shooting it like it's a Nerf gun or something like that. She's actually kind of like paying attention and not just what we do now is like anticipate the release with compounds, and that's another reason why bow hunting is great and archery's fun and terrible and sucks and everything at the same time, is because it's just like golf, right? Everyone basically knows what to do, right? So you draw back, here's your peep, find your anchor point, line them all up, sight in your bow, shoot the same arrows that are the same weight, and if you do everything right, it hits right where it goes. And then all that stuff happens in your head, and you're thinking like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And and there's so many other things. And then it all goes to shit like in 2 seconds. And you're like, I know what to do. Like all I have to do is line up these 4 things, and I'm going to make a perfect shot. And then, there's people who've made a living because they're the only ones that can do it.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm a huge golfer too. I golf on my downtime, and I know exactly what I need when I get up there to shoot my shot. All right, pick my target, line up, make sure to just keep my elbow right here, swing through, boom, bullseye, full straight shot. Nope, pull, draw, shank, top, spin, whatever. Same thing applied. I didn't right there to go hunting with a bow. So I've been golfing now for a couple of years and hunting now for a while now, and this is the first time I've actually compared the two now, like since right now. So thanks for that little analogy right there. I like that. I'm gonna start using that now.
Well, I mean, all you got to do is you have 4 shots to take this ball and put it in that hole. And,
it's simple.
And guys will do it. There's tons of guys that make a lot of money doing it in 3, 2, like, but gentleman's 10, snowman. Like,
right.
why can't I do it? It's just
Exactly.
as easy. Right?
Anyways, here. So you're a public land hunting guy. So what are you doing out there to be successful? What are you looking out there on the public land? I'm sure you're on there e-scouting. What are you looking on the east on online maps? What are you looking on there? And then what are you looking out in the field to be like, you know what? This is where I need to be.
So remember how I prefaced this and said, like, I'm the world's worst bow hunter, right? So just take that with, for what it is. But like once I really started like going to public land, my father-in-law, that's all he'd ever hunted. And I came from a, just rifle hunting this week a year, and then bow hunting, just here and there. And so once I started that, I mean, we were traveling all over. We were doing basically everything that all these killers on these podcasts say. We were looking at tracks, we were doing all this stuff, but most of the time I was like too young or too distracted to be like actually paying attention. So once I started like figuring it out or finding these things for myself, and it's funny to think about now, but like the first buck that I ever killed with a bow was like a little 6-point, but I found that deer by following the biggest set of tracks on the 2-track and to where he was going. And then I figured out maybe where he was coming out. And now when I'm doing like my e-scouting and I'm looking at these places here, at least I'm looking for like the biggest tract of land that I can find so I can get away from people. And it's really difficult now with, Spartan Forge, Onyx, Base Map, Hunt Stand, whatever, like with these mapping apps, there aren't, there's kind of like no barrier of entry, right? So you're very much empowered to go and not feel like you're going to get lost. You can follow your breadcrumb back out. So I'm trying to find like the biggest, I go to places that absolutely suck to go to. Like, I'm like, this is awful. Like, I've got one camera that I put out last year, and I don't think I hunted it once, and the camera's still out there. And I was just thinking about it the other day. Like, I have to go get it, and it's just like, it's awful. Like, I was trying to figure out like what's the easier way to get in there when I'm not trying to worry about access or, wind direction or anything like that. If I just go grab this camera and pull the card. But that's what I was looking at, is like big tracts of land. But one of the things that I think, what I'm looking for is I'm not a big buck killer. I can kill deer, and I can get on little bucks. And that's what I'm trying to like get better at. And what I'd always find, like, there are some guys who are very, very like methodical, like I was saying, and that's just not me. So I'm just looking for deer. So I'm finding like doe bedding areas and getting on the downwind side of doe bedding. And then when you're hunting those like quintessential, say October 23rd till right up until our gun season, till November 14th, like, you kind of just got to find the does. And if you can find does, and there's going to be bucks now that are going to be a little bit less predictable or whatever, they're not going to be necessarily on the runway, or you might have them chasing does around you. They're not going to get up out of their bed and walk right to you, like in the early season. Like, and that's why these guys that are, bed hunters, are these guys that say that they suck at the rut. It's because they have done all the homework. They've put everything into it. And one thing that I'm realizing is that it's a lot easier for me to get on deer, or like bigger deer, out of state. And I don't know if it's because there's bigger deer out of state, or Michigan hunting is different or whatever, but I think I've kind of like synthesized it down to the fact that I need to change my hunting style to hunt Michigan the same way that I hunt out of state. So like, when I hunt out of state, you're not going to the places that are comfortable, or the places that or whatever, because you've never been there, and you're up against this like time window where in state we're like, well, this is a pretty good spot. Like, I see deer here often, like whatever. And it might be, I got a wind that's favorable for this spot. Maybe I'll see something, maybe I won't, but you have this long season, so you're not like super worried about it. Where when you go out of state, you're just blowing through like everything until you find like really, really good sign. And that I feel like that's the difference. Now there's other factors there where, like, when I'm hunting out of state, I'm usually hunting like the rut. So I'm hunting, or like the pre-rut, I'm hunting times where the deer that I want to kill are going to be more active or whatever. But there's so many times where you'll walk, a whole day or whatever. And I used to think, like, when people talked about that, I was like, that's nuts. Like, why would you do that? But it's like, you don't want to waste, more than like 15% of your time. If you got a 5-day hunt and you waste a whole day sitting somewhere and don't see anything, that was 20% of your hunt that you just wasted. I mean, you could have been wandering around looking for like actually where it's happening. And I think that, like, that's what I need to do better. And that's what I'm going to focus on kind of like this year, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to, just hunt when it's convenient, or, my wife said I could hunt today. Like the years that I've been the most successful in Michigan was going to places where I knew that there were deer moving, and then kind of like almost stage hunting. So like, go in and you see deer over here, and then you're like, okay, I just need to get closer, just need to get closer. And that's when I've had some of my best encounters or best luck of doing stuff like that. But I think, we in our own states, we think that we've got all the time in the world, and we don't put the emphasis on like being in the right spot right now. We just say, well, we got time. It'll happen eventually.
I know for me, I only, like I said, I only hunt with a bow, and I hunt on private land. I've never hunted on public land because I've had the ability to hunt on a private property my entire time. I have October 1st through November 14th. And as soon as it hits shooting light on October 14th, my brain is constantly thinking, all right, my time's running already. The clock's ticking. I got to make sure this happens, because if I don't, by November 14th, if I don't have what I want, my season's basically over with. And I know where I look for deer I do e-scouting, but I know the property very well now at this point. I love looking for the transition zones between the bedding and the food, and where can I find that really small, narrow point between where they're going to bed to where they're going to head out to the feed, and what's going to make it look like, what's what I want to use here, very chaotic from that A to B, because if they're not going to want to travel in that trail that's wide open, they're going to want to go through basically hell in a way to get there. So that's what I've noticed I've been looking for the most, and how I can set myself up for success in getting close to those as possible. And I feel like there's a point where it's like you might get too close, but you can still push the boundary, and you have to make sure that where the bedding's at, where the food's at, and you make sure the wind's coming in the right direction. And I know that we've talked about on other episodes on our show is wind direction, stuff like that, but you can kind of overanalysis things to a point, because deer are deer, so they're just going to be moving around. But if you can set yourself up for success, that's the biggest thing, and just not going out there willy-nilly. And I've caught myself doing that. All right, my wife says I got time to go hunt, I'm going to go out there and hunt. But this year, like you said, I want to be more methodical with the days I hunt, make sure I'm being a little bit more precise with it, and being more, I'm attention detail-oriented type of guy as it is, but paying attention more to the smaller details as possible.
So let me ask you this. So when you're hunting these land, these private land spots, like how big are the properties? And then B, are you like married to a spot, like where it's all like preset stands, or are you mobile hunting this stuff?
I have preset stands, and it's an 80-acre lot. 40 acres of it, though, it's just open food plot of the neighbor, lets them build corn, soybeans every other year. But I have a lot of stands, and I moved them all around. I'm constantly moving them. Tomorrow, my buddy and I are going to be moving some more stands. So I have general areas that you might consider myself as I'm married to them, because I found success in them where I know they're going to be moving. I might not see it for weeks at a time, but I know that a mature buck is going to want to use this. I just got to make sure I do it correctly, and I'm not over hunting that area. And I found pieces of the property where it's like, you know what, this is going to be a spot where I really want to try. For instance, I found a spot last year where we're going to be moving the stand to this year, where I wouldn't even think about putting a stand there before. But I say, you know what, I'm going to put a trail camera here. Next thing I know, my phone's blowing up with bucks moving through there constantly. So finding the thicker areas is something that I'm going to be trying to really test myself this year to see how I can do that. And just because I can shoot up to 60 yards in a clearing doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have the best opportunity to shoot the deer. I want to be able to get as close to these bedding areas from these transitions areas and put myself into the most thick cover spot as possible.
Yeah, I'm just asking because like I've got family that they just hunt the same spot every time. And, you know, even guys that are like successful and they kill great deer, you know, they find themselves sitting in these stands and they say, well, this big 8-point or whatever, only he kept cutting this corner. He kept running the fence around and popping in over here. And I'm like, why don't you just get a mobile setup and go over there and cut him off? Well, because at some point he's going to come by me, but that's like that efficiency thing. Like what I'm talking about. Like if you were on a 5-day hunt wherever, and you saw that 2 sits in a row, I mean, and there are many guys that will I can think of one instance where I should have done that hunting Ohio, where I was sitting on this bottom and I saw one buck go by across this creek, and then I saw a second buck go by. I saw 5 bucks go by that over the course of 2 hours. And in hindsight, you know, like I should have gotten down and just moved over there. And there are guys that do that regularly, because after that second one goes, or if the deer movement's over there and they're on an out-of-state hunt, that they're just going to go over there and move because they're just off of the X on that day for whatever reason. And again, like I said, with the rut, right? Like you may be in the right spot, but that's not where they're chasing the does today or whatever. And that was the case in that instance. But that's why I was just wondering, because like I said, I've got family who like they'll grind it out in that one spot. But like if we were to think about it from a 5-day, 7-day window or something, you know, I guess would that change the way that you looked at it?
No, I agree with you. And my buddy and I have actually been talking about getting more of a mobile setup, because we like where we have our pre-planned stands in the areas. We like where they're at, but we're going to be moving them, and we constantly seem like we're moving them every year, and it pisses off my dad, but I don't give 2 shits. I put them on deer anyways. But we have talked about, we've had a lot of times where we'll text each other after the hunt where it's like, fuck, I thought it's being a great day, but they're just keen to be popping up over there, or they might be moving on this side of the property. And if we just had something where we can move the stand and put something over there, but we have been talking more about getting more of a mobile setup type of deal, because that way we can move in quick, be light with it, and we're not tramping around a 300-pound tree stand, whatever, and tramping through the woods. We're just quick, mobile, and just set up in the tree right there. But that is a good point that you should look at from a 5-day point, because you never know. Just not be married to that spot. And I've been caught before like that. It's like, fuck, I don't want to sit here. I put 2 weeks in this spot. It's gonna fucking happen. It's just a matter of time. But I know where a lot of those times where I was sitting there in that stand for 2 weeks, and it's like, shit, there they go again. They're right there. Oh, there they go again. Next day, they're right down there. Shit, I should have put a tree stand there. So what happens? We put a tree stand there the next year, and they come popping out somewhere else. So it's like,
well, and that's the thing is, like, you can, you know, even with what you're proposing that you're doing now, it's like, okay, well, all these deer, but there could have been, you know, some underlying factor that those deer knew that you were hunting there, or that there was pressure even from you, you know, doing everything right. I mean, deer have like 2 jobs, right? To breed and stay alive. Like that's it.
yeah.
So like they're pretty good at staying alive once they get to the age that we want to kill them, right? So just even by moving those stands around, it's like they're still paying attention. They live there, right? So if you can get in there before they figured it out, then you know that's the, you know, that's just like, why can't you just hit the ball in there 4 times, right?
Right.
it's you know, people do it. They set it up that way. Yeah, it's the $1 million question. But I think that's like why, like, I think that we always hunted out of climbers and then moved to stand and sticks, and now with the saddles and all that, like, I wouldn't even, like, it's weird to me to sit in a preset stand and like have no ability to like move around. And in the past couple of years, especially like in the later season, like I've been hunting more from the ground Like I'm not, I mean, I was successful in Kansas, but that was just an accident. But I've been liking being like even more mobile on the ground. And I've been hunting with a longbow, still terrible at it. I'm so, world's worst bow hunter, so great at bow hunting. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make it way harder. I'm going to try it from the ground with a longbow. Like, what an idiot. But it's, a personal challenge type thing.
Yeah.
But I really do enjoy like even being more mobile, being like, oh, let's go over there. Like the deer over there. Like, I don't have to set anything up. I'm just going to like still hunt my way over there. And I just, it's hard for me to be like, okay, I'm just going to go climb up in such and such ladder stand. Now I understand the benefit of it, right? So like if you got, like we were talking about before we started on here, where you only have so much time, you have like very truncated timetable, and you want to get in there quickly and quietly, all that stuff. And even out of state, like a lot of times we'll go in, find a spot, set up for an evening hunt, leave it, go back in for the morning hunt, and then if nothing's happening, tear down and move on to the next,
I did want to ask, you brought this, you mentioned it, so I kind of want to ask, especially here in Michigan, what would you consider a mature deer, especially here in Michigan?
3.5. I mean, a 3-year-old deer. I know that they get older than that. I know that there are bigger deer, and like, especially in southern Michigan is a whole nother, realm than northern Michigan. I mean, I've killed 2 3-year-olds here in like around where I live, and like one of them, so one of them is right, not that one, was like 100-inch, 105. The other one is almost identical to that, just has a little bit bigger frame, and that one was like 110, something like that, and it was 187 pounds. I mean, so it was dressed. But in the UP, my dad killed a 3-year-old, like probably close to 120, and it was 197 pounds dressed after it hung for 7 days. Like, I mean, the one behind me is the bigger one is from Kansas, and that's probably like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old deer. I don't know. And that one was gigantic. I don't know. I had to cut it up. It was like 70 degrees, but I didn't weigh it. But the freaking deer, when his legs were up in the tree, like I'm about 6 foot, like the gambrel was like about over my head, and his neck was scrunched up on the ground. Like that's how long the deer was. So I think, it was a 200-pound deer for sure. And so when I say like how big is a mature deer or whatever, like I think a 3-year-old deer, but other places that's not necessarily the case. But there are guys that kill them bigger than that. But I think that 3-year-old here in Michigan is, mature, quote unquote.
I have a buddy that lives down in Illinois, and we had him on the show, and he said it perfectly because he's hunting here in Michigan and Illinois because that's where he lives now. He said, I'm just going to paraphrase because I can't exactly word for word what he said, but he said 5-year-old deers here are like mature deer out there, but a 2-year-old deer here in Michigan is going to act like a 5-year-old deer because of just being pressured so much, it's being hunted so much. It has so many things going against it here in Michigan, like compared to Illinois. So that's why I've kind of been wanting to see more people's opinion on mature deer here in Michigan, because they made a great point here in Michigan. Does are extremely smart. I'm not ashamed to say it. I've tried shooting does. I've shot 2 of them, didn't find them. I have yet to actually put my tag on a doe in 18 years of hunting. And the bucks out here, they act freaking smart. And because they're constantly being pressured, I mean, heck, I feel like here in Michigan, we basically invented the phrase, if it's brown, it's down. I feel Michigan kind of started that, in my opinion. But I just like to see what other people's opinion are when it comes to what you would consider mature deer here in Michigan. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, you get a good sense from like talking to your guests and people like that. But, you know, I deal with, you know, a lot of listeners and Patreons and all that stuff. So like when you talk about like it's brown, it's down, like I got buddies from Tennessee or New York or whatever that are like, we used to go out with rifles and shoot 30 deer, you know, and just, it didn't matter. And, you know,
Right.
like, so we've processed 20 deer, 30 deer. So I think, and that was the same thing, like talking with Ben Harrison with the Bow Hunting League. Like we just did a podcast last night, but he was talking about, you know, when we talk about like what's a good deer, what's a big deer, you know, we talked before the podcast, like Ben killed like a 183 or something like that and killed a couple 160s and whatnot. And so they're not shooting 3-year-old deer. They're not, that's not a big deer to them. But he says he goes to the Iowa Classic and the guys don't want to enter his contest or whatever because they're like, oh, we can't get on big deer. But everybody has this idea of like what a big deer is to them or like to their area. And so if you're in Iowa and people are killing big deer, just like if you're in Michigan and you're or Hillsdale County, Jackson, you know, you're seeing these big deer, which they're here, but representative of the state, I don't know. You know, Wisconsin has like what, Buffalo County, and then they've got the rest of the state where it's brown, it's down, and they're just whacking everything. So we all have that, no matter what state you go to, no matter where. I mean, it's funny that you said Missouri, because you know this is Missouri week. Like I hunted Missouri a few years ago, and like I could have. It's one of these things, right, where you say like, "Oh, I could have killed."
Yeah.
Like I had a 100-inch buck at like 25 yards for, you know, 5-10 minutes making a scrape, and you know I videoed with my phone, and you know I went back and forth. Like it was like one of these things where like if I had my camera arm, I probably would have shot him, but he wasn't like what I really went down to Missouri for, which is so stupid because I haven't killed enough 100-inch bucks to be like, yeah, I'm the greatest hunter ever. Like, you know, my wall's too full for that one. Not at all. Like that was stupid. I should have shot at, I should have attempted to kill that deer. We'll say. But we went just right up the road and we went into this deer camp that was just like all the walls were covered in all these monster bucks. And this chick was talking about there as she was driving back or whatever, that there was like 2 150s in the road fighting. She had to stop the car for him and all this stuff. And I'm like, and she's like, I would have shot one of them, maybe like he had weak 2s or something like that. And I'm like, I'm going to shoot the first 120-inch buck that walks by. And like, it was like, you could hear a pin drop. It was like the old like record, like no way. And it's just like, everybody thinks like wherever they're at, like there's no big deer or there's only big deer. Now granted, at that camp, like one of my buddies did kill a 200 out of that camp. So that's what they were after. But like, I would say for the majority of people who listen to my podcast anyways, like I've never seen a 200. So it's not like I can put that as like, yep, 7-year-old deer, 7-year-old or nothing. Like no teeth. That's what I'm looking for.
And I always challenge people when they say like, all right, I want to shoot mature deer. So I always ask the question. So you're telling me, in my opinion, a real mature deer is a deer that's 7, 8 years old, and he's not pushing maybe the biggest rack, but you have this deer that's 8, 9 years old, and let's just say ballpark, he's going to be 80 score wise. You got a 5-year-old deer that's pushing, let's just say on average, you see about 180. Which one are you really put down? Honestly, I'm going to shoot the biggest one because I want to shoot the biggest deer possible. But I really want to, though, to shoot that real old mature deer, because I've been asking that question lately only because I saw in my photos the very first time of a deer. He was pushing 9 years old because he was just fat, old, you could just tell instantly that this was an old deer, and he was just 4-pointer. And I was like, that's the deer I'm after. I swear he averaged, just looking at the photos, he probably weighed almost realistically 230. I was like, that's a deer that I want to put in the fucking freezer just because of the characteristics with him.
So let me ask you this. And I saw that last year when I was out glassing this property that I didn't end up drawing to hunt, but I saw a buck that was like a really nice 8-point, whatever, 110 inches or something like that. But the thing looked like a mule. Like it had like this big sway back and this big belly, different color. And then right next to it was probably like a 130s, like a buck that had an extra main beam. So it was a triple main beam buck. That was just like the coolest thing ever. And so when you say like, which one would you rather shoot? Like I would shoot at either one of them at any point guy. And where I'm going with this is like, you were talking about like trail cameras and cell cams and all that stuff. And, I really don't care as far. I like doing trail cameras to have proof of concept, I guess, like that I'm in the right area, that there's deer there. And I think we are chasing pictures too much, especially with the cell cam. Like maybe a private land situation is different where it's like right out your backyard or something like that. But if you can, like, you're always late. Like if you're not in the stand when you get the picture, like you're already late. That deer's been there and gone. Like whether you get the picture tomorrow when you go out there and check it, or if you get it, can you use that information to kill deer? Oh, absolutely. And people do it all the time. But for me, with the cell cam or like with whatever, and kind of like what you're talking about, like this 9-year-old 4-point or this like 130 or whatever, like I almost prefer like not running trail cameras or just going to an area that I know nothing about. And again, go back to out of state where we're not running cameras. We're not doing anything. We're just running around on public land, hoping to run into one, using everything that we've learned or what we practice or everything, all our woodsmanship, whatever, to try to figure that out. Well, I just keep saying like comparison is the thief of joy, right? So you think about that, first little 4-pointer or whatever you killed, and like how excited you were. Like if you don't have those cell cams and you don't know that there's that 130 and that 4-point walks out and you're like, oh my God, this thing looks like a horse. Like you shoot him and you're just like jacked. But if you have the, a picture from yesterday at, 30 minutes from right now, you may be like, oh, well, I'm not going to shoot that deer. And you're robbing yourself of that excitement and that story and all of that, because you're like, oh man, this buck's going to be over there. But that 4-point maybe wasn't there yesterday and the 130 somewhere else. And so now you're just sitting there with your bow in your hand, like, what an idiot, And that, I mean, that's kind of like what goes through my head. Like I love, calling my buddies to come track a deer when they call me to do that. And like, how many times you're like, oh, I seen this. It wasn't big enough. It's not the deer I was looking for. It was not, daggers or splits or James Dean or whatever you name your bucks, like that's not my style at all. It's, if it walks by and I'm excited, like this Kansas buck is a perfect example. Like when I saw the deer, I was like, oh my God, it's a giant. And then it came up and I shot and I missed him. And, then I shot him and then, called my buddies and we had to go track him. And when I walked up on it, I was like, man, it's not as big as I thought it was, but the body was super huge. But it didn't change the story. It didn't change the narrative. Like, is it like the quintessential representation of like the deer that's in Kansas, like that everybody wants to kill? I don't know, but I'm perfectly happy with it, And so that like, that's the thing is like, if I were to be like, compare it to, whatever, compare it to the farmer that kills a 160 every year or whatever. Like, I don't know. I didn't get a chance. Like that was day 2 in Kansas. But I'm not the guy that's going to be like, be able to score a deer on the hoof and be like, oh yeah, he's, his threes are weak. Like his, main beam could use, he needs another year. Like that ain't me at all. Like if I'm excited, I'm shooting them. Like that's it.
Yeah, so I mean, if I see a deer and it gets my heartbeat beating, you're dead. Sorry, I don't care score wise, whatever the case may be. If my heart is beating on my chest when I see it, I'm gonna put you down. And I like to make a note here. Jacob made a comment here. If it's 3, it's for me. So that's a good. I like that. No, but that's a good point. I mean, you do rob yourself after seeing what's out there, and a lot of people use it for inventory and seeing what's out there. But I remember talking to Daniel a couple of episodes ago, and he said he's going to try not running any cameras. I think he said this year or next year, where no cameras. He's just kind of going out there basically blind. And I love that idea. And I think, I know, for instance, when I use my cameras, I'm just strictly using it for inventory and seeing what's out there. But I would like to do that as a challenge for myself next year, just to see what's it like to hunt out there, not knowing basically what is out there. Because I know there's this deer out there for 2 years, and I was kind of holding onto the bow. It's like, I know Geronimo's out there, so I'm going to hold on my bow on these other couple deer. Granted, they didn't get my heartbeat going. They were really small for me and where I'm at. But, and I say it because this one deer, he came through last year, and I was able to harvest him. Never saw a photo of him, but he looked just like my biggest deer I have to date. And next thing I know, I'm looking up, and he's running out of the woods, coming straight at me on this cornfield. And my chest was just like, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know who the fuck you are, but you're dead. And he walks right in front of me, and I shoot him. And next thing I know, I'm going through old trail cameras, and it was like, oh wow, he was in the area at the time. And I would like to, one point, not run any cameras and just kind of go in there blind.
Well, I mean, and like I say, like the cameras for inventory, and like I was saying earlier, like the camera that's still out there. I mean, I had a couple of them, but like that, the one that just absolutely sucks to get to. Like I got cameras. I got one camera that's dead, but it's up at our property in the UP. It's a 7-hour drive. So, and
wait, the camera's 7 hours away from you?
Yeah.
Oh, shit,
that one, the one in the UP, yeah. And so, that's where like a cell cam is, valuable, right?
Right.
It's not like I can just be like, oh my God, he's there. Like I'll hunt him tomorrow afternoon or something, like a drive through the night. But to run cameras for inventory, like I say, like the cell cam to me is like just for like spots where it really sucks to go in there to check it. And, just to, like I said, like validation, like if you're like prospecting, like, you haven't hunted public land, and I would encourage you to do so. But it's like a prospecting thing. Like I say, like I try and find these big properties, and then I go put a camera out there, and then I want to see like if there's deer, if there's bucks in the area, if there's deer moving through there. Cause like I said, if there's does moving through there regularly, then I know that all I needed to figure out is, during the rut, if there's does in the area, there's going to be bucks. So then we can figure it out in a couple of days, like what's happening, where they're moving through. But they can also see how many guys are in the area doing the same thing that I'm doing. And, then that can push you further into an area or one way or the other. So I'm not saying that cameras don't have a purpose, but what I'm saying is when guys like get married to a deer and they start chasing trail camera pictures, and especially cell cam pictures, like we're always late and we're always in the wrong spot. So, I mean, and I did it last year. I hunted an area that was convenient, that was close to home. I knew where I was supposed to be, and I'm sitting in a tree, not seeing anything. And I had 3 different bucks show up like exactly where I knew I was supposed to be that day. And one of them was a buck that I'd never seen before. That was the biggest buck that I'd have on camera in that spot ever. I mean, just that one day, that one time. And so then what do? I go sit there the next day in the rain, like in a like legitimate like downpour, pouring down rain. Don't see anything. Can't stick it out. It was worst. I mean, it was awful. But I was doing it a day late for a deer that wasn't probably even in the same county. stupid.
Right. Yeah, and I know where I take my cell cameras. I just have my second one now. I mainly put those in those, like you, basically, where it's just those bedding areas close to them where I don't want my scent to be as around as much as possible, and just thick areas where it's like I just want to see what's kind of moving through there, if I'm in the right area, and that's what I like to use those cell cameras for. And I'll use my regular SD cameras. I'll use those on big main trails throughout the property where I'll just walk it through, and I can easily just pick it up, grab it, and switch it out with another SD card. That's how I kind of been running my cameras in recent years.
So what's keeping you? I mean, is the area that you're hunting, like your 80 acres or whatever, like for you, it sounds like your dad and your buddy, like so chocked full of big bucks that like you're just overrun. There's enough for all three of you, and you can't like see yourself hunting another spot. Or like, what's keeping you from, or is there no public land around? Like, what's keeping you from hunting public land?
I just had access to the private property, so it's just quick and easy. It's right down the road from me, and I harvested my first real mature buck. He's 4 years old, a couple of years ago. But I think just in me, because I grew up on it and it's a special place to me, I only want to really be that as a place where if I'm going to get a mature deer, that's going to be something I want to do. I'm very sentimental in ways like that, especially when it comes to hunting. So I know, that's probably the best answer I can really give you. Really, last year we saw 6 mature deer that we were all right. Never seen this before in the 18 years I've been out there hunting. You might see 2. You'll see 1 for sure. Outside of that 1, you're going to be lucky to see anymore. Last year we saw 6, and we were just ecstatic, like, oh, this is going to be the best hunting year ever. And then next thing you know, a couple weeks go by into October, no one's seen shit. No one's seen photos. Neighbors aren't seeing anything, and they all just like vanished. And it was a very weird season. We were all hyped for the season going into it, and a little disappointed at the same time because some of us got deer, some didn't. And don't get me wrong, they were happy with all their deer, but they were just kind of more of, oh shit, where the fuck did all these deer go out of nowhere? And they were on a regular basis. But yeah, to answer your question more of, I love the property. If I'm going to do it, I really want to do it on that piece of land. It's very challenging. I've had my ups and downs on that property for sure. Where I've had years where I didn't see a deer, or 1 year I'll fill both my tags, and then next 2 years I won't see shit, or I'll miss a deer. It's been a very up and down roller coaster on that piece of property.
So then on the down years, the nostalgia outweighs the deer hunting.
Yes, I get very pissed off and I get very motivated. Like, yeah, I'm not going to let that happen again. And then I get them into a year where it's like, all right, and I make it successful. And it's like, damn, next year is going to suck because I was very successful this year. It's just kind of a roller coaster I've had.
So then that nostalgia or whatever, do you hunt out of state? Is deer hunting only that property? And then is it your property, or like what happens if the property gets sold or you lose access?
It's a neighbor's property. If it's going to stay in the family, and we're always, as far as I know, going to have access to it. Due to my prior career as working in law enforcement, I wasn't able to go hunting because seniority working in law enforcement, you had to have the time off, and then you had to be able to make sure that no one else was taking that time off as well. So it was very hard for me to get any time off, let alone a week at a time. I'm not against going out hunting. I definitely want to go out west. I definitely want to get into Illinois. I definitely want to get into Indiana. I know for a fact I want to get into Missouri, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Those are states I definitely want to get my feet in, and Maryland now as well. Now that I'm in a place in my real world working life, I can take more time off, and that's something I definitely want to get more into, and really get more into mobile hunting, public land hunting, and stuff like that.
So what's holding you back this year?
This is my first year where I was able to finally get like time off, but then you get the bills and all that shit and the kids, and now that they're finally getting able to finally be on, they're still young, but they're kind of a little bit more independent, so they're not leaning on mom and dad as much. So this year is kind of like, all right, let's kind of see where we want to go next year, and then I convinced the wife that I can go somewhere out west and or anything like that and go.
Well, I feel like you got to get your feet wet, right? So, I mean, at least for me, and you're a little bit further south than I am. So, like Indiana's real close. You can hunt some really good property in Indiana. Like I can be there in 2.5 hours. And like the more I talk to guys on the podcast who, will travel 3-4 hours, to hunt one sit, they'll get up at 3 a.m, 2 a.m, 1 a.m, drive, go down, hunt Ohio, Indiana, somewhere, or even in Michigan, guys from either run up and hunt northern Michigan, central Michigan, or they'll go down and hunt, the quote unquote good areas. And it's just, to me, like there are guys that have like a different mindset. And it's just something until I started talking to these guys, or like putting myself like inserting myself into that, they're crazy. Like don't get me wrong, that I'm not at that point like where I'm going to drive 3 hours to do that, but in a couple hours you can be on public land in Indiana or Ohio, and it doesn't have to be a 30-hour drive out west. It doesn't have to be that, but you can really kind of challenge yourself by going down there and just trying to figure it out and do it in I think we hunted 3 days in Indiana last year, or 4 days or something like that. I barely e-scouted it. I never stepped foot on it in my life. I didn't even know we rented a campsite and drove down there, slept in an enclosed trailer, like in a dirt bike trailer. And, went and, again, quote unquote, could have killed some deer. Like I had a spike bed down 30 yards from me, and I had does and spikes and stuff. And then the last morning, like the last day, like I don't want to say like we had it figured out, but we were getting closer. Like I saw a couple rack bucks. My buddy had a 6-point come underneath them. And it's like, those aren't really deer that we would necessarily shoot in Michigan. So why go to Indiana and shoot one just to shoot a deer? But all that to say, it's again, like validation of like you're figuring it out. Like if you enter into this, like me, like the world's worst bow hunter, right? So now here I'm going to another state on property that I've never been on, and I can at least get on deer. It's like that validation. So I guess I would just challenge you to say, like, it doesn't have to be this big grand hunt, and when you go out of state, like most of them suck. Like I hunted Wisconsin. I hunted Wisconsin for 3 days. I took my daughter trick-or-treating on Halloween, put her to bed, drove through the night, ended up in Wisconsin. I got there when the guys that I was meeting were going out hunting. I took like a 3-hour nap, went out. I saw a Pope and Young buck that night, went back in the next morning. There's guys everywhere. It was awful. Like, so that's trying to cross this creek. The creek's too big. Like, it was like a big, huge, giant ditch. I didn't have waders, so I had to drive all around. And then I mean, quote unquote, again, I could have killed the smallest 8-point like I've ever seen. Like the rack would fit like in your hand, like, just because they have different genetics. But I was right where the deer were, and I saw another, maybe close to Pope and Young buck. And I was just a little bit off, but that was the last hunt of my like 3-day weekend or whatever. So that's what I'm saying is like, these don't have to be, I mean, maybe if you're like very, very, there are guys that are like, that have different definitions of success. So a successful hunt to you is to go and kill a Pope and Young buck, or I mean, I got a buddy who's a great hunter, and his goal like out of state is a 100-inch buck. I think that's fully reasonable. They're not, my bear hunt, I didn't come home with a bear. It wasn't successful. I've been elk hunting 3 times and came home with 1 elk, and I ended up having to shoot it with a rifle. So maybe that's success, maybe that's not. But those experiences and like those deer camps and like being able to find a hunting partner and go hunt with somebody and like, embrace the suck, right? Have that terrible galvanizing experience just makes you want to go do it again. And then like it seems like every time it's always like the last day or whatever, like when you start to get it figured out is when you have to go home. So it's just like that drug that keeps you coming back, saying like, okay, now we gotta go. But that's what I'm saying is like, it doesn't have to be like, you can have all the nostalgia that you want on your one piece of property or whatever. And like Aaron Blicey from the Fall podcast, like I think the first time he hunted northern Michigan and saw some does or whatever, and then he hunted his first like real public land hunting was in Kansas, and like it was a very love-hate because he came off of like his property that he's hunted his whole life, and it's he'll go scout on public and there's deer over there, but he doesn't leave deer to go find deer. And it's just a completely different experience when you take yourself out of your comfort zone to go and do it. But like I say, it doesn't, and then this is not just like necessarily like me berating you, just talking to the listeners, right? Where it doesn't have to be like this picture perfect deal where you got to have a wall tent and all this stuff, or you can, the setup in your truck and all this stuff. Just go down there with a regular old tent, find yourself a place, cook some hot dogs over the fire or on your little Blackstone or whatever, go out and hunt and, take a weekend with your buddies or whatever. It doesn't have to be a week. It doesn't have to be, all of this stuff. Now, granted, success is, everybody has a different definition of success, but at the same time, if the tag in Indiana, I think, is like $165 or something like that, and it's 3 hours away, and you invested the $165, maybe you can peel yourself away for a couple of weekends or something like that, So I don't know. I would just challenge anybody to just kind of get out there and do it, like get outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm always trying to push my comfort zone out there, and yeah, to be able just to drive down there, honestly, I've never even really considered it till just now, honestly. And I think that's going to take some couple buddies, and we're just like, you know what, right down to Indiana, like you said, you don't need to have the big camper coming down with you. Just go out there and rough it, basically. And that I really like that idea. That's something that's really going to sink into me. I'm going to really start thinking into this year and moving forward with it. And yeah, now you got me thinking. You really got me thinking now. Yeah.
The guys in Indiana are like, God dang it. Like, what? Shut up.
Exactly. It's like, son of a bitch. No, but that's a good point. Cause yeah, Indiana, that's like a 2-hour drive basically to probably the border basically for me. And yeah, there's nothing saying I just can't drive down there for a little bit. For a weekend, be like, all right, wife, honey, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to hunting for a couple days down there.
Well, yeah, even like right now, if it's just a 2-hour drive for you, you could go down there, you could look at your maps, you could find whatever public is around, and then you could go down there in the summer and glass and see, is it worth it? Anything, is it something that I want to do? Oh, I've seen these deer, but just to kind of like change your mindset, because for the most part, most guys that are hunting public land are doing all that stuff here in Michigan. And so if you have this, 80 acres, that's your home base. That's what you're going to hunt. And I mean, you can do all the freaking habitat work to your heart's content, but you only have so much that you can do on 80 acres. And if 40 acres of it's a field, then I mean, you're not out there mowing it every day and doing all this stuff. Granted, you have time for your family, but hell, you could take your family down for a camping trip to Indiana and do double duty and say, hey, we're going to go glass for some deer, look for a hunt spot. This is what I'm doing. Honey, you do whatever you're going to do. I'm going to take the kids camping. We're going down there camping. I mean, I take my daughter glassing quite a bit over the summer, and, we just get a bunch of snacks and ride around. if we're, depending on where we're at, she's like, can I take my seatbelt off? Because we're only going 2 miles an hour. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like, eat your snacks, and she thinks that she's doing something great and she's eating snacks and doing all this stuff. She's not on her iPad. She's engaged and we're spending time together. So, there's a lot of ways to get kids involved with hunting and show them like what you're doing. But as far as like I said, get creative for hunting far away from home or out of state. That's what we do when we go up to our property in the UP. We go up there one weekend in the summer and bring all the kids and shoot all the guns and do all the stuff. But then we're getting our fall food plots ready and taking a look at like kind of what's going on, hang trail camera, stuff like that. But it's that weekend where, hey, none of the wives go up there. It's like, hey, we're taking all the kids, we're going up north to do deer stuff, and the kids just love it. There's no service up there. So like I say, there's and again, that's one of the reasons why I started hunting out of state and stuff like that, because it's 7 hours to get to our property in the UP. That's everybody would kill for 240 acres in the cabin. Oh my gosh, well, it's 7 hours away, and nobody's really talking about, I mean, like, man, the UP really holds all the giants, right? So I can be in Ohio, I can be in Indiana, I can be in Wisconsin quicker than I can be to our property that is very, very nostalgic. But as far as like if you want to kill a big deer or whatever, somewhat mediocre deer hunting.
I think if you're going to define success, I think it's going to be determined on yourself, on not just towards you, but I'm saying like towards anyone. You have to define what success is to you. Is it getting a deer in general? Is it getting a 100-inch plus deer, 200-inch deer, whatever? Or is it just being able to go out there, getting out of your comfort zone and trying something different, and you're successful in that? Or is it going out there trying your best and you might not harvest a deer, but you gained experience through it and you tried your best out there, and at least you're not coming home empty-handed? So what exactly is success to you? So I think that's something that's going to be that you have to determine to yourself. I know now talking to you, I'm definitely going to start thinking about, well, I'll go down to Indiana for a weekend or so. I think what my success would probably be, if this would be the first year I start hunting down there like that in that situation, I think just getting a deer in general, I think that would probably be a successful hunt for me, or success. That would be something that I would define as successful for me.
Well, so like we were talking about, like, who's like prior to the podcast or whatever, like who's my listener or whatever. So I've got all these guys that have never hunted public land, or guys that aren't mobile hunters, that don't, guys that have never killed a deer with their bow, guys that have never killed a buck. So that those level of successes are way different for each of those people, right? And if you define your success, again, we'll go back to that comparison is the thief of joy. We are on Instagram. We see all these guys that everybody kills a 140. Like, everybody in the whole country kills a 140. Why can't I kill a 140? I'm not going to kill that 6-point because I got to kill a 140. Well, I've never killed anything with my bow, but that 6-point isn't big enough in comparison to everything else. And for these guys who are new or whatever, it's like sometimes a successful hunt is not forgetting your arrows. Like, sometimes a successful hunt is getting set up clean and quiet in the dark. Sometimes that's seeing a deer. Sometimes that's not getting busted. Like, all these hunts, and like we talked about at the beginning, like where people like where the deer get a say, right? So it's not just us, right? So we have to, even if the deer wins, like, we have to take away something positive from it. Like, well, I was in the right spot. Well, at least I got to see that deer. Well, I had him in bow range. Well, all of these things, like, so we can't, if like 99% of the time that we go hunting, like, we come home with nothing. And so do we quote unquote fail every time? There are some guys that think that, and there are some very, very efficient hunters. But I think the reality of it is that we have to learn from every time in the woods, whether we wrap our tag on that deer on that hunt or, we didn't see a damn thing. But, like one of my brothers, if he's in the tree stand, he's not at work. So that was a successful day. Like the hunting, everybody takes something different away from it. They have a different level of what hunting means to them and whatever. So that's what I mean. Like, so if you're challenging yourself, if you're going out of state, like, and you've never mobile hunted before and you've never hunted public land, like it might just be seeing a deer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I know when I'm out there hunting, I definitely, if I don't see anything, yeah, it's a bummer, or whatever the case may be. I always try to, when I start packing my gear in for the night, I always think to myself, all right, what did I learn out of this experience tonight? I always try to figure out, is there at least one thing that I can take away from this hunt, even though I wasn't successful in it? I always try to find one little thing, so that way I can be better going forward. So that's how I do with that in my hunts. And sometimes I might not exactly think of something right away. I might think of like the next day or something, but it's like, you know what? I had to think of, what did I learn out of that day of hunting? And is it figuring out where the deer have been moving lately, making notes better, or whatever the case may be? I'm always trying to figure out how I can improve myself day in and day out. And with that being said, we are running into the lay of the show here. Adam, I do want to ask, was there a story or a topic that you didn't get to share or we didn't get to talk about tonight before we let you go for the night?
I don't know. I mean, I think like the overarching thing for most of this, but like kind of based on our like most recent conversation here, is that for us, like I talked about like our deer camp and stuff like that, and we were saying like, go out and find your buddies and go take that weekend and go hunt. It's like you said, hunt. I think you said it at the beginning, but like how hunting is kind of like dying, and people are worried about it, and there's so many anti-hunters and stuff like that. Well, that's just kind of like that same, everybody's killing a 140. We do our deer camp every year. Like for the past 2 years, we killed one 80 90 inch 8-point or something like that the first year, and 4 or 5 does. And then last year we killed a spike and 3 does, I think. And nobody cared at all, because everybody was just there for the camp. Everybody was just building everybody up. Everybody was just there, no ego. And so like for us, there's a big onus on like deer camps. And so even if you don't have a camp, or even like for your 80 acres or whatever, and it sounds like your dad and your buddy, like you guys should get together and like, go out in the backyard with a couple campers and hang out around a fire and talk about the hunt and all that stuff. And I think, that is really what like hunting and in general is to me, is that camaraderie. It's that, that's why I love doing a podcast. I get to talk to guys like you. I get to talk to all different kinds of people, and we share this. It doesn't matter. Like I could see if we were at like our kid's birthday party and we were just there kicking rocks, like this is dumb, like don't eat that, like stay away from that. But you got a Matthews hat on and I got a Latitude hat on. Like I know I can come up and talk to you and we can find common ground and talk, and in internet, bullying and everybody's the best hunter in the world on Facebook and Instagram, and everybody's killing the 140. The reality of it is like when you get around everybody, it's much easier to kind of like learn and build everybody up. And our deer camps like have been like a great like a reminder of that. And so I would say to like anybody that's watching or like listening to this, or however you find it, like if you and your buddy are going to be hunting, you have the same week off and you're just going to be hunting your properties or your spots, like go get a campsite or, something so where you can have that like deer camp experience. And I mean, it's something that is going away. There's not as much of it now, and especially not for bow hunting like there is, even the gun camps are kind of going away. But you can do it as a bow hunter too. That's what I'm saying. Like it's just really something that we've really come to find important, like kind of be reminded of that over the last couple of years.
I know in Michigan, deer camp, November 15th, basically a holiday here in the state of Michigan, and kids aren't going to school. Everyone's taking the day off. That's just the norm here in Michigan. I would love to see more of those, of the bow hunting for October 1st, where everyone's getting together and making that more of a world, like a state thing, where it's like that's the new holiday, and more of those deer camps. And what you guys are doing, it's amazing. And every time I'd meet people like, "Oh, you're a hunter? Oh, so you take November 15th off?" I said, "Nope, I'm a bow hunter." It's like a very odd thing to people here, at least in the state of Michigan, where they're like, "Oh, you hunt with a bow? That's weird." I love it, hunt with a bow, and I'd love to see that more of that on that pedigree of with the gun here in the state of Michigan. But yeah, I think I love after a hunt, I always sit with my dad. We always get the family together, especially on the weekends. We sit around the campfire and we're talking stories. At least me and my dad were talking about what we saw or what we didn't see or heard or stuff like that. And my wife and mom and the kids are just be running around talking about. I have no idea. I'm zoning them out because I'm talking to dad about deer. But yeah, I think deer camps are no longer this big thing. They're very few and far from being found and stuff like that. And I think deer camps are an amazing thing, and they definitely need to get a reinsurgence of hype, I guess, basically a brand new level up to it. And so you guys are doing your own deer camp. Is that correct?
Yeah. So like I said, we do Patreon, and we've done it for the last 2 years. Well, this will be our third year doing it. And, this is nuts. So we did, October lull, like the worst time for hunting. Cause the thing is like, we have all levels of hunters. So we got guys who are like brand new to hunting, and we got guys that are like absolute killers. Right. So we're not messing up anybody's like out of state hunts. We're not messing up anybody's trips. It's kind of like that weekend where maybe you would go to the cider mill or something with your family or whatever. It's like nobody needs to be in the woods. And the first year we had 30 guys show up, and last year we had 50, and it was just insane. Like we're touching the limits right there at what we can handle. And this is not like this is just public land. Come on and hunt, or don't hunt, just come for the camp. But there's guys who have never killed deer before. We had a guy kill his first deer last year. He killed his first deer with a vertical bow, and it was a buck. It was a spike, but nobody cared. There was no buck shaming. There was no whatever. We were just super pumped, and it's all about the community, and there's like leaving the ego at the door. This isn't a, it's not a guided hunt. There's no, there's no nothing going on. And that's when it like really becomes apparent that, we need more of this, because on social media, everybody's saying, oh, it needs another year, and, guys are bringing in these tiny little does and stuff like that. And we're just ecstatic, because you're successful. And like, where were you sitting? Why'd you set up there? Like, what were you, what broadheads did you use? Oh, look what this broadhead did. Like, look what this broadhead didn't do. Like, oh, my arrow broke. My arrow did, all these things that you can't get, conversations that you can't have in the moment. Like, you're not inspecting the carcass of somebody's deer. You can say, oh, these are the best broadheads ever. This is the worst broadhead ever. Like, whatever. But now you get to see it and how the stuff performed, and just to see it in real time. And especially for guys who didn't grow up like that, or they don't have the friend group or the support system. Maybe they learn from their father-in-law, who's not the greatest hunter in the world. Maybe he's just a gun hunter, bow hunted with a recurve way back in the day or something. So it's just that environment. And that's what I was thinking when you were saying about like how you and your dad were just sitting, revisiting the hunt, like after the fire. Like think about, those 2 or 3 young guys or girls or whoever that are out there hunting and they don't have anybody to share stories with or learn from or whatever, and they're just trying to figure it out. That's something that we take for granted, that invaluable information, like where we just gloss over it because it's something that we've done our whole lives, where it's something that people can really kind of like latch onto. I think that's what's really been, cool and kind of like the important part of it.
Well, it's definitely something that we're going to start to try to do here, because I think that is a very important thing. Because you're right, we do kind of take it for granted, where we sit around there and we're talking about whatever the case may be, and one of the buddies might come over and we just talk about whatever. And I think you're right that we take that for granted. We look to overlook those things, and I think that's something that light needs to be shine on that for sure. But that being said, Adam, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the show. You've definitely opened my eyes here tonight. My mind, I don't even know if I'm gonna be shutting my mind off tonight, because it's like, man, I got some thinking to do here now, but in a good way. So I greatly appreciate it. For anyone that wants to find you, how can they get in touch with you? How can they do so?
Yeah, Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, like probably most active on Instagram, but we're basically everywhere. And then as far as finding the podcast to listen to, like we got some on, I think there's like 300 episodes or something on YouTube and, everywhere else. But this is on YouTube, so people can find us there, and Apple, Spotify, basically anywhere else. And, like I say, take it all with a grain of salt, like world's worst bow hunter.
No, but Adam, hey, I just want to say thank you again, man. I really appreciate it. And want to make sure you go check his stuff out. Again, Adam, thank you so much, man. I hope you have a great rest of your night. I definitely want to stay in touch with you, man. Like I said, you opened my eyes, so I'm gonna be doing a lot of thinking for a little bit. So I can't say thank you enough, man.
Yeah, anytime, man.
All right, brother. I hope you have a good rest of your night, brother.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh man, what a great guy. And yeah, it definitely opened my eyes, thought of things that I definitely haven't thought of before. So that's why I love having these podcasts. It's definitely something where you're gonna meet a whole bunch of different people and really open your eyes in different ways. And that's why I love starting this podcast, because you're meeting new people, you're talking with them, and people are going to have a different view on certain things. And he's right. That's something I never even considered, where why don't you just take a weekend hunt down to Indiana? Never really considered it. So, but with that being said, Adam, thank you again for coming on the show. Thank you everyone out there that's watched and tuned into the show tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Make sure to go put your quarter in the slot machine, help share the show. I greatly appreciate everyone out there that's doing it. I can't say thank you enough. Like I said, we are going to be on Carbon TV now. We signed the agreement with that, so we're waiting on the launch date. Once we have that, we'll let everyone out there know. You can also find us on Waypoint TV and anywhere you find your social media platforms, and Spotify, Apple, stuff like that. With that being said, I make sure you use the code GP10, GP10, get 10% discount off Gilly Puck products. Go check out MAGNUS Broadheads and Grizz Media. Again, thank you everyone out there that's watched and tuned into the show tonight, and for tuning into all the other shows. And we'll be back tomorrow with episode 82 for Wednesday, June 19th. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.